Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. I don't know if you can hear me. Please, can you confirm that you can to confirm that you can hear me? Just in the comment section, you can just type I can hear you. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Please, if you okay, okay, that's great, that's great, that's great. Okay, that's great. Okay, okay, all right. Okay, so my name is David. I'm a representative for Choice Talent, and I'm going to be facilitating on human resource management. I'm going to be taking through all the concerns that are the graduate training sessions for this particular January 2024. So, and there are list of programs, the list of trainings that are going to be done for all the graduates, which upon the completion of this training, there will be a knowledge assessment. Not just it's just these trainings are not just only for human resource management, but other administrative and other basic functions for the workplace. The essence of the training is to help all the participants gain the workplace skills and prepare them such that when they are recommended to employers for placement, it's easier for them to be integrated and just a few little trainings will be needed. So these are just workplace skills that are that you're being prepared for. Okay, so that said, I want us to just delve in straight. Don't want to waste so much time. If you do have questions, I'm going to be okay. I think I've seen some comment that are saying it's not playing on their end. Please ensure that your network is stable. Ensure your network is stable. If you can't hear or if it's not playing on your end, then just ensure your network is stable because it's definitely going to be a network issue. So because the other people who can hear and who can see, then if also you're not hearing, you might try using an earpiece. Try using an earpiece. I prepared for that. I thought if we're not going to hear me, I'm going to use an earpiece, but a large number of people can hear. So do ensure that you use an earpiece if you can't hear. Then if you can't see me, or if it's not playing, just ensure that your network is okay. You might just turn off and turn on your network again, and it might just be fine. Or you restart your device to ensure that your network is up and running. Okay, so like I was saying earlier before I began to talk about the HR program, the entire graduate program. So this particular one is under HR. So, but there's the section that we're going to be taking you through. Of course, as you move through the HR functions, possibly if you are inducted into the into the HR department, you get to learn more. But the basic ones that is going to concern you as an under entry level as a HR person is what we're going to be considering today, which is definitely going to focus more on recruitment and selection, as well as onboarding. But as much as we can take today, we'll do that because we have just 1 to 2 hours to this particular session, and the remaining that we can't take, we'll take them tomorrow. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about human resource management. First of all, human resource management is the act of managing human resources, like we just put them together. So now in defining human resource management for an organization, this is just the process of procuring, managing, and maintaining human resources for any organization. So now we're talking about procuring. This is a process of both your selection process, your ability to source, select, pick the right person, and also not just picking them, onboard them, train them, place them, then at the end of the day, follow through, manage them all through their process or their lifetime within the organization. Okay, so at this particular time, let's delve in straight into the point because this is just a live stream, and I want us to go straight into human resource management, into recruitment, training, and selection. So now I'm going to be talking about recruitment. And the objectives of this particular section of the recruitment, training, and selection is that at the end of the day, every participant is expected to understand the basics of recruitment and selection, the criteria. How do you recruit if you get inducted into the HR department and you're moved to handle selection processes? And when you're told, okay, we need, let's say you need a personal assistant, what exactly, or they said to you, can you just help us shortlist a personal assistant, or we are going to be shortlisting, or we're going to be hiring a personal assistant, what do we do from there as a HR person? So now, the HR session is very broad. So, but first of all, the basic thing is which is required prior to that time. As I said, there are a lot of things that would have happened before you get to this stage, which is recruitment and selection. But this is what concerns. So, what would have happened is the job design, the job analysis, the job design, the job analysis is made. So, design what exactly is this particular job role supposed to fill for the organization? What is the importance? Why do they need this particular job role? And is it needed? Can it function? Do they need it for the short time or for the long run? So they exactly know if is it going to be a contract job. At the end, all these details will be done under the job design and job analysis. Who they're supposed to report to, the department they are going to be working at the end of the day. So it's all this is aligned. So now we want to take, for instance, that all this has been done and sorted out, and you're now presented with a job description because all this has been done with from the job analysis to the job description and the job design. All that has been done. So we are now presented with this job description to go and source for a credible candidate for this particular position. Now, let's take, for instance, that we want to source for a personal assistant for this particular role. Now, one of the basic things we're going to be doing is that we, as a HR person, you're going to look out or make inquiries about who is this personal assistant going to be assisting. What are their preferences? What do they require? What do they want? What do they look out? What are they going to be looking out for in the individual that they want? So this we're going to be asking critical questions, and all this has been answered in that job design. So now we take that straight into the job into the recruitment process, and we pick up those job descriptions and then list them on possibly on job boards. It might be online. It might be on social media platforms. It might be on take for instance popular job boards that we know. We might have also our own in-house database, possibly people who come to drop their CVs or people who have submitted earlier to this time when this job opening has come up. So we want to reach out to those ones within our database and say, okay, do we have people who fall within this category? Do we have people who can fit in exactly well into this role? So if we don't have people within that particular place, we might want to say, okay, we'll reach out to this now. I'm giving a prefer. So we'll now reach out to maybe the entire staffs within, if they have referrals or they know people who can function in this particular role excellently well. We want to go ahead and use recommendations and referrals from in-house or even from your fellow HR contacts. You might get those from there. So in the instance where you did not get what you want, then you can decide to go with the job board. But oftentimes the job board is much more important, much more placed as priority because you make it public. That is one, and then two, you have a lot of you get a lot of applications, and you have the advantage of picking from a pool of ready candidates. Remember why I say ready? Because at the time when people submitted into your database, they might not be ready or open for new job offers when this job is now open. So when this job is now available. So in that instance, what do you now do as a HR person? So we make it public, and at the end of the day, so we get ready and available people who want to work with the organization, and they are brought in. Now, in this instance, we go ahead to receive the applications, and remember, in listing those applications, we have a destination or a method of application. So this method of application is like is like a requirement, not just a requirement, but a procedure that has to be followed. If it's not well followed, then there might be penalties. For instance, you might ask people, ask the applicants, use this link to make your applications. There's a reason why you have stated, okay, use this link. Possibly maybe there's a HR software that's being used by the organization. So use this link. and they decide, okay, since maybe the XYZ, a different HR has already used their email address before, they want to go and forward their email address through that HR, or they know about the company website and or the official email address on the company website, and they quickly just go there and go and submit email, submit their job applications. Of course, this penalizes them. That is one. Two is that they will not be considered for that role. Of course, because no, you definitely as a HR person will not go or you don't expect any applications from that place. And anyone who sends in the application from them is definitely not looking to be hired, because the rules has said, or the method of application has said, follow or apply using this link, or send your applications to this email address, this designated email address, or you might say apply in person. You might also say, okay, send a message on WhatsApp or call this number to get more information. So there are different ways you might want the applicants to apply. So now, in this application model, once the applications are received, let's take for instance that you have an email address which the applicants are going to be submitting to, and they submit their applications to that particular email address. So now it brings you to the first thing you're going to be doing. Now you have a requirement that has been listed possibly by the head of HR or by the head of the department or your direct HR supervisor. So you want to work with this particular criteria in sieving through the applications, because that is the stage where you are now, where you've gotten applications to that particular email address. We're using email address now, and you're sieving through that particular through the list of applications that have been sent to you. Now, before I continue with this, technology has made applications easier. So you might be working in an organization that has deployed this technology. That's why I'm not using that route, because it's much easier. And at the end of the day, it's something that you can easily learn. But if not, if you don't have that, then possibly you do not know how to use the email address method of sieving, then you're going to be having a little bit of issue. That's why we're focusing on the email address. So, but the software automatically makes things easy. All you just need to do, possibly you just say applications from Lagos within this particular age range, blah, blah, blah. You type all the keys that are required. It just automatically sieves everything for you. So every other applications that are outside of that will definitely not show on that particular search result. So you use the search that's a search engine of that particular HR software to make your job very easy. So, but not every organization has deployed that technology for you to be able to do this kind of thing. So now taking for instance that your organization has not deployed it. So now you use email address. Now, in using email address, let's talk about the applying in person as well. So people might come in to apply and they are dropping their CV hard copies. So sometimes it can be very difficult to manage. And today, in today's world where we're going digital and paperless, it's much more easier and it's much more preferable and trackable for you to ask people to use the email address when you don't have a HR software such that they can apply with a link. If they're not applying with a link, the best option is for them to apply through an email address so you can track their applications, and also for future reference, you can make reference to those applications should the need arise. Now, that said, we go ahead to talk about, okay, so now we'll go ahead to talk about, sorry, I think I got some messages. Okay, yes. So now, what then do you do using the email address, the email address function now? So people, you begin to sift through one by one. That's the email address is tedious, but definitely that is what it is. So you're going to sift through all those applications one by one, which is time consuming. You're going to be looking out for the basic details of what was given to you by your head of HR or your direct HR supervisor. For instance, you want people who you might have placed the job opening and the organization, let's say, is in Abuja, and you have people who are in Zamfara applying for the job role in Abuja. So now those ones will definitely take much of your. Of course, you have to load the CV or download the CV to view them. But if you're using some viewing softwares, some viewing platforms that allow you to preview before you download, that would be great. So you review their CVs and see, oh, this particular person is not even within Abuja. So now you want to set your criteria to help you speed up your CV process. So now you're going to be looking at for their location. Where exactly this application coming from, or the owner of this application, where are they resident? Are they resident in within the place where this job is located? So if this job is located in the FCT in Abuja, and this job requires that this person must resume on time. So you have to be very careful to select people within the FCT who are going to resume on time. Remember, if you hire someone that is far away from the FCT, they'll be struggling with issues of traffic and they might not be able to resume on time. That should they get successful on the road. So these are the things you also want to consider while you are sifting through these CVs. So now you want to look at their those basic information that was given to you. So first of all, the address before you begin to consider more details on the CV. So you check the address. Are they close to the job location? If they are not close to the job location, then that's you just want to discard that particular application. So this is one of the reasons why you have a lot of people applying for jobs, and they say, "Oh, I've been applying, and there's no one responding, or it's not pulling through, it's not being successful." This is one of the reasons. Then secondly, you might have asked them to apply by putting forth their email, by putting forward their CV and their application letter, because some jobs require that you also provide your application letter. So if in that instance, the person puts only their CV, then they have an issue. But when there's no application letter, since there's no application letter, you might not be able to process, because at the end of the day, if you decide to still go ahead, you will have to ask them to provide an application letter upon getting successful or selected for that particular role. So now, but not every HR will be very, very generous to do that. Just go ahead, follow the instruction, because at the end of the day, if you do not, by the time you are going to be forwarding the details of how you arrived at this candidate, and you might not just be looking so great before the people who have assigned you to do this particular task. Now, in sieving through this CV, you want to also pay attention to basic information. For instance, if it's a gender-sensitive role, let's say a parking officer, and you want this particular job role is going to require stress, much stress. Some of the opposition might prefer to have a male in that particular role because of the level of stress involved. Then there are some job roles also that require a lot of field activities, moving all around, and those field activities might be in places that are not so that are not much or more like places where are interiors or very remote, and you don't want a female within that particular role because of issues of violence and the rest of that. So you want also to hire not just only a male, but you want to hire a male who understands or the ruggedity of the street as well. So these are the kind of things that you want to look at for, but these things might not be spelled out in the job description that was published. So now, but these are other basic things that are withheld, and you want to use that as your analysis to arrive at the candidates that are going to be moved to the next stage, your screening stage. Remember, you're still selecting and you've not even gotten to screening. So now we'll move on to the next one. You want to take a look at their age. You want to are they within the age range? Because sometimes there's some job roles that they specify not older than 26, 27, 30, 35. Some job roles might say not less than 35. There are some job roles that they require advancement in age, such that more importantly, those are leadership roles where some people believe, some of believe that they need someone who has vast experience. So by so doing, because there are some people who still have that level of experience, they started that early, but their age is below that. So, for instance, I might have a 10 years experience, 10 years of leadership experience, and at the end of the day, let's say, and I'm below 40, and for this particular role, what they want is someone at 45 or someone at 43, between 43 to 45. So, meaning, yet, I have that 10 years leadership experience and maybe a total of, let's say, 15 years work experience. But I started my leadership role 5 years after work, 5 years into the workplace. At the end of the day, I still might not fit in because it requires that I have that 10 years experience, leadership experience, and also I should be above 45, or I should be within the range of 43 to 45. So you see, there are different roles, there are different criteria for each roles, and at the end of the day, you have to follow that in your in delivering the list of candidates that make it to meet with the management. So please, I think the questions are coming. Okay, hold on. I think I'm going to take some questions. Okay, I want to ask a question about the application letter. Hold on. Okay, so I think someone is saying that if the application letter can be typed or if it is in PDF or Word document. Okay, I'll just, if I get that question right. And so now, the questions might be in the cover letter or the application letter that you are using for your application. You might decide to paste them as in the body of your email. You might decide to paste your cover letter in the body, your application letter, sorry, in the body of your email. But your cover letter has to be different. Your cover letter for your application has to be different. So, and you have to make it either a PDF or a Word document. And the format, when it comes to formats, oftentimes the best format is PDF Word document. PDF Word document. So, but it's okay, even if you send your application letter and you send your application and you just attach your email address, your cover letter, and as well as your CV, you can just have those attached into your application. That is great, and whoever it is going to consider them. So, but oftentimes, if it is requested that you provide that cover letter, you have to provide that cover letter or an application letter, whichever one that was requested for. Now, I think okay, it says there's definitely no big difference within the cover letter or the application letter, but at the end of the day, your cover letter is more like an introduction to your CV. But the application letter talks about the current job you are applying for, how you are very suitable for that particular role. That is what your application letter does. It's asking that you be considered for that role. Okay, sorry, I think, okay, more questions coming in. Okay, I think, please, that's great. Let me just go into more detail so that we can be able to wrap up, achieve so much today. Remember, we have very limited time. Now, we talk about the sieving process. While you're sieving through each of these CVs, please, I'm still going to reply to your questions, but I'll create time for that. That's towards the end of the section. So we're going to be having, you have age, you have different criteria to your application. And now, that your application requires that. Hold on, I think I definitely need some water. Okay. So now, what I'm saying at the essence is that we need to have a particular. Please hold on. I'm going to get some water. I think I'm a little bit choking here. Let me get this. Please confirm that you can still hear me. I don't know. Okay, so now with regards to the selection process, one of the major things that needs to be done is you have to take a look at the the basic criteria that were listed, like the age, like the gender, the location, the academic. Before we begin to get, we are talking about the biodata now. The biodata is very much important. So when you have sorted out issues with the biodata, you move ahead and begin to look at the criteria for academics. So now, for the academics, you have possibly, if you are requested that you get a candidate who has a BSc or a HND, oftentimes the BSc HND, most organizations do not look at it. All they just want is as long as there's a BSc or there's a HND for that particular job function. But there are some job roles that requires a BSc. Now, for instance, you have a request for, let's say, a medical laboratory scientist role. That med lab scientist role, requires that a HND cannot have a med lab scientist role. I don't know why. What's going on? Please spare me a minute. Okay, I think I didn't know I muted the conversation, so you can hear me now, right? Can you hear me now? Please confirm that you can hear me now. Okay, so now in that instance, what definitely I was saying earlier that for every of the job design that or every of the job that was created, what you have, you're going to be having the job about the job description, which contains the responsibilities of each job. Then you're going to be having the job requirements, as well as the dates which the job is going to close. Then you have um, the remuneration about the job, how they are going to be also applying. So, but now we're talking about the requirements for each of those jobs and how you're going to be sieving through this job, these applications. So we've talked about paying attention to where the employee resides. That's more like their biodata, their residential location close to the job. Please confirm that you can hear me. I don't know, some people are still saying that they cannot hear me. Please check, you can try using an earpiece if you can't hear me. I have already unmuted. Okay. Okay, I want more people to, okay, more people are still confirming. Okay, I think we've gotten a lot of confirmation now that you can hear me. Okay. Okay, all right. So I think I have a lot of confirmation now about the sound. Please, if you can't hear me, ensure that it is not a network, because I have unmuted on this particular end. I've already unmuted. Now, let me go straight. We're spending much time already. So now, in the process of sieving through those CVs, you want to pay attention to the requirements of that application, of that particular job. So now, the job states that we need someone with a BSc. Let's say we need someone with a BSc in medical laboratory sciences, as medical laboratory science. So now, a HND cannot have a medical laboratory science. What HND has is, I think that's a med lab technology or something in that. There is technology that they have. So these med lab technicians, that's what the Polytechnic provides, medical laboratory technicians. Why the BSc says medical laboratory science. So oftentimes what they do are slightly different. So you have to pay attention to that. That's where you have a discrepancy between BSc and HND. But outside of that, sometimes there are basically no much of a difference between the HND and the BSc. For instance, when it comes to let's say administrative role, nobody takes the HND or BSc. There's no issues about that. But in reality is that there are no major issues except for when it comes to details. When it talks about the job requires technicality, then you have to pay attention to the Polytechnic, that's the HND. And when it comes to when it has to do with the science or whatever it is, you have to pay attention to the BSc. So now, that said, let's go ahead and talk about other basic requirements. Now, let's say it says that we need someone with at least 5 years work experience. So you have to look through their resume and say, okay, this particular job description, the job this person have done prior to this time, how many years have they done it? Now, you have to, for instance, person has started sometimes in 2017 and been on that job from 2017 till date. So obviously they have accumulated 5 years experience on that medical lab scientist role. So it means that they are okay for it. So, but when are they not okay for this role? Let's take, for instance, that yes, they have a work experience of over from 2017 till date, and between 2017 till date, they have changed multiple roles. Let's take, for instance, they have left, they started as admin and worked as an admin for, let's say, a year and 6 months. Then they move over to become a front desk or like a front desk from 2018 to 2019, and they moved from between 2020 to 2021, they worked as, let's say, a hospital assistant. Then from 2021 to 2023 or 2024 till date, they are now working as a med lab scientist. They do not qualify for that role. So because the job role states that they must have a minimum of 5 years work experience or over 5 years work experience. So it means that they do not qualify for that particular role with regards to work experience. So now, then there are also instances where you have people who change more. Okay, I'll get to that. So now, still on the work experience, you have worked in the hospital and in the laboratories, or let's say it did not work in the laboratory section, but they have done something similar, close to it. Remember, similar is not close. But what we are saying is that somebody who has been a medical laboratory scientist for 5 years, for over 5 years, that is what the job requirement states. So not that person has worked in a hospital in any capacity or a capacity that is close or related to it. To it. Even if you want to say, okay, let's consider people who are close to it. Maybe they worked as maybe whatever position that they worked, but they worked. They definitely still do not match. What the requirement says is that it has to be. What the requirement says it has to be a 100% medical laboratory scientist for 5 years or over 5 years. So now remember that please, for the purpose of controversy, please, all the examples I'm giving are just examples. I'm not making, let's say, I'm not stating them categorically that this is what it is, because these things vary from organization to organization. Because I think I'm seeing some comments here. So please, these are for purposes of example. I'm just trying to make references to examples such that it can help you understand this particular section very well. So now, in handling the recruit, so we talked about job description. Now, let's take for instance when another issue with job description. This person, if this person has worked as a med lab scientist, let's say for instance, the person has worked as a med lab scientist between 2009 through 2016, and I've left med lab scientist role. So between 2009 to 2016, they have worked as a med lab scientist. So meaning that they have yes, they have had that 5 years experience. So but they cannot function. They cannot be selected because they left in 2007, 2000, let's say 2015, and have done other things. Let's say they left med lab scientist role and they go on to become a clerk or an admin, even outside a healthcare facility. And let's say they now return back to, or they don't even return again, but because they've had it previously in their work, in their history of work experience, you don't want to hire such people because their experience might be outdated. There are new technologies every day. We have new technologies evolving, and at the end of the day, if the technology has advanced so much that the candidate is unable to keep up, then there is an issue. That's what we're talking about here. So, but we want to find someone who has a recent knowledge on the role, who has a recent knowledge, who is currently on the role. This is the kind of people that we are looking for. Then we go ahead to say, how then do we? I think this is very clear. So, meaning they have done this thing before, but they are not doing it currently, and they have stayed away from doing this particular job function for a very long time. Then there's an issue. you cannot shortlist them, or you cannot bring them or select them for the next phase of the interview. Then we'll go ahead to talk about other things that disqualify people with regards to job description or what they have done in the past. Remember that they have done something similar does not mean that they are qualified for the role. No, they have to have done exactly what the job description has stated. So we want to be very clear. Somebody who have done this, who have done this, who have done that, and exactly. So it has to be the same. So they must have done all those things to qualify for the role. Then we move on to the next one that talks about the expertise. Let's say the job role states that they must have had maybe like a leadership experience on that role. So let's say they must have had like 2 years or 3 years leadership experience. In that instance, they must have that 2 years or 3 years leadership experience. Or it might say the job description might say that the person must have led or must have been an admin prior to becoming, or must have 2 years administrative experience, because there are some ways that these things are crafted. Say 2 years administrative experience. Then at the end of the day, they must also have let's say 2 years administrative experience, 3 years in the medical laboratories scientist role, then possibly another one, other criteria that is listed. So all these must be well stated, so such that they have worked as an admin. That is one. Then move on to the next one. They must have like that 2 years, 3 years medical scientist experience. So all these, each of them must be well represented. So meaning, while you are saving for this particular candidate, you have your scorecard. You have for each person you are picking, this person meets this, meets this, meets this. So you have listed all the criteria that you're going to be using to sieve through those CVs. So you're not just looking through the CVs or scanning through the CVs to find out something that all the criteria, you are very, very conversant with all that have been listed for you. So you begin to list them, you begin to follow each of them to ensure that they are detailed and they are there. Essence why I'm taking much time to stress on this is where the core is. At the end of the day, if you invite someone for interview that does not even reach that does not even match the requirements, you're just wasting your time as a HR person. Because you find out that after you have spent all this time, you wasted your own time, you wasted the person's time that you are interviewing. Because at the end of the day, they don't have what you want. And even if you say, okay, this person is okay, and you move them to your supervisor will say, let me see the job description that was forwarded to you. Did you take note of this thing? And at the end of the day, you look as though you were not trained, or you did not even understand what you were asked to do, and you don't want that kind of scenario. So at the end of the day, it means that you have to pay attention to all the details that are both on the requirements that is listed there. Then let's go to job description. It's saying that these are the basic things that the person is going to be doing from day to day. You want to compare their CV. Remember, that is why it's imperative. We tell people, when you are applying for a job, don't just write on your CV, I worked as, let's say, I worked as a medical scientist that we're considering from 2009 to 2012, and I just keep it. I just write that on my CV. I don't even get to say where I worked, the name of the organization. I did not put it there. The location was not there, was not on the CV. There's no detail about the day-to-day activity. You see why some people submit CVs, and at the end of the day, they say, I've been submitting and applying, and nobody's calling me. That is one of the reasons. So, but when the HR, because when the HR looks through it, say, what exactly are they going to compare with the job description that they have? They discard the application. So that's why, at the end of the day, the person needs to provide those details. So now, as a HR person, you're comparing what this person is going to be doing versus what they have done before. So at least if they are close, that's a close range. But if they match the same thing, let's say for instance, they're going to be analyzing or handling blood culture, they're going to be doing this, doing that, working with this XYZ machine, working with this machine. And basically stated on their CV, I did blood culture, I did this, I run this test, I did blood test, I do XYZ test, I can do all the tests that are required by a med lab scientist. And not just saying I can do all the tests. Person is listing every single test that they can do. So this is a potential candidate. You want to bring that up. When you see those kind of CV, they stand out. They stand out. So you take those, you bring that particular application out as part of the people that you're going to be meeting with. So that brings, so now you see, when you have up to 1,000 CVs for one particular job application, you don't need to CV. Again, by the time you go through all those applications, you just find out that possibly people who meet with this criteria might just be just 15 out of this 1,000 that have met all the requirements, and as well as also written down the basics of everything that they did. That's why it's important. Everything that was done by a candidate is supposed to be noted down on that is relevant to the job. Not then not a situation where you have you're applying for a medical scientist role and you're telling me how you were a financial secretary or how you were a volunteer for, let's say, to go do something that is all related to the job. So I think that's not the discussion we're having. But we're always telling people, do not put things that do not relate to the job on your CV. It makes no sense. Okay, so now at this instance that you have found, let's say you found 15 people for this particular role that matches from that 1,000 application that was submitted. Now, what are you going to be doing? You want to now send them possibly because now in this stage, different organizations use different models. I am going to be working with the model of your organization. But sometimes you might decide with us here, what we do is that we send first a preliminaries. We send preliminary questions, first of all, to get more information that we may not have found on that CV or that we need the candidate to reaffirm. So we send them those preliminary interview questions and they have to reply to those preliminary interview questions. So from there as well, you want to still downsize. So maybe you downsize and you're able to get 5 out of people who have replied to these preliminary questions. Now, these preliminary questions, what are we talking about? What exactly is the content of these preliminary questions? It states more categorically what is required for the job. Now, the basic details that are required, they need to know at that particular stage of the interview will be reviewed there. You want to ask them critical questions also with regards to the job. Now, those questions that will take much of your time during an interview session, you want to also drop them there. So they have to now reply to your questions. So when they reply to your questions, you want to now see, okay, does this, you read through them, so without them coming to you. Remember, at this time, you're saving yourself the stress of planning, scheduling, and interviewing with them. And at the end of the day, they do not meet what you want. Then for the candidate themselves, you're also saving them their own time. So they use their time for something else, and as well as they save their transport. So nobody gets to waste each other's time. So at this time, you have been able to downsize. The essence of this downsizing is for time and resource saving. Then for us here, the next stage, what we do, once those people have passed through that particular stage, then you go on to say, let's move them to hold a virtual interview. So whichever one comes first, it might be a virtual session, or you might want to run them through some tests or other forms of tests that are listed there. So now, but let me go a little bit into the manual. So at this particular stage, there are different tests you might want to run. It might just be a personality test. It might be an IQ test, all forms of tests that you may want to run. So all these are within the selection process. So hold on a bit. So you might be running an aptitude test, intelligence test, achievement test. Remember that there are some roles that you don't need some of those tests, but there are some basic roles you want them. For instance, if you're hiring for a salesperson, somebody within the sales or marketing field, you want to run an achievement test. You want to see that kind of person. What have they done before? You want to prove that they have done or they have accomplished these feats prior to this time. So you also want to run possibly maybe like a projective test. There are all kinds of tests that you may want to run. Then your organization might also devise a different way of also testing their candidates. The essence of testing is to ascertain that what this person puts in their CV is exactly what is there. Remember that people these days use different softwares to create CVs. You might even hire a consultant to help you write. There's nothing wrong. That's great. It's absolute to hire a consultant also to help you with your CV. But at the end of the day, you should be able to prove every single detail that is on your CV. Don't come and tell me that you can do XYZ on your CV and you can't do XYZ. You tell me you have the good use of initiative on your CV, but now we want to run an intelligence test, and we are saying that you're not even able to use your IQ properly well. So that's going to be an issue for the applicant. So that's why if you say I can do this, you should be able to have done it, right? You should be able to have that. So that's where the option says, okay, we're going to use this modality to test for this. So if the job requires a lot of IQ, at the end of the day, what's the candidate is required to go through all these tests to ensure that, remember, this test is not just, we're not talking about the medical test now. So now the medical test comes when the person has been selected for the role, or is being considered for the role. So, but at this stage, you are testing every single thing that they have on their CV to say, okay, what they have on their CV is exactly what it is that they can do. Then, if these people are okay, you might say, now let's do a virtual interview. When they pass this test that you have provided for them, you might say, okay, let's run a virtual interview, and we start with the virtual interview. So, amongst that, let's say 5, 10, you do a virtual interview for that 10, or you might even say, okay, I'm not going to do 10, because for each of them, you must, it's imperative that you take out enough time to be with that person on that interview. That's why for some of these, all these tests helps them to also ascertain. So if you have passed all these tests, at the end of the day, you might downsize to just 5. So people you are going to be interviewing will just be few, and these are top-notch quality candidates. So at the end, if they have made it to this particular stage, then it means they are very good prospects for this job. You're just coming to test them, and this time around, possibly you want to see their presentation skills as well, and other things that you want to ascertain virtually. Then the physical, when they pass your virtual interview. Now, remember, in virtual interviews, there are things you're going to be looking out for. That's why we always, if you, we've done a lot of crash courses and posted for candidates and applicants to help them understand that you're holding a virtual interview right from the comfort of your home does not mean that you appear for an interview on a pajamas, or does not mean that you'll be lying on your bed holding an interview. So, because these are major errors, and as a HR person, you have to look out for some of these red flags even while you're holding a virtual interview. You want to see so if you are going to be interviewed as a candidate, you have to present yourself excellently well. That you are having an interview like as though you were physically invited or physically at the location. The same way you are going to present yourself is the same way you should present yourself for that virtual interview. So that you, as the HR person, is supposed to take note of these issues, of these key things. So now, then you want to look out for basic, maybe some other things like the demeanor, like the carry, like some basic things that are critical to the role. Now, take for instance, it might be attitude. Because most people don't know attitude is very important with regards to the role that they are applying for, and most roles actually. Now, how each of the candidates coordinate themselves through the interview process is very much imperative. As it concerns your organization or the organization you are posted to, you want to find, so every single thing that they require, you just work with the requirements and the job description, and as well as you now put your own initiative there to ensure that the best candidate emerges for the role. Now, after you've done your physical interview and you are satisfied with maybe you are satisfied with just 5, or you want to also, when you're done with since they're just 5, you want to invite them now for a physical interview, because all you've done all this while has been non-contact or contactless interviews or assessment, candidate assessment. That's contactless candidate assessment. So now, remember that there are different types of interviews that you can have, which are informal interview, formal interview, planned interview, or patterned interview. Even pattern interview, non-directive interview, depth interview, stress interview, group interview, panel interview. All these kind of interviews may not apply for every job, for every type of job. Let's take, for instance, you want a cleaner for the organization. You might not also have to apply all this. Your organization wants maybe like a floor level staff. There are some floor level staff roles that all these are not required. But there are some key roles, supervisory roles, leadership roles. They are very much important. Then I want to make emphasis. I listed up to 7 types of interview, which is informal interview, formal of informal interview, planned interview, patterned interview, non-directive interview, depth interviews, stress interview, group interview, panel interview. That's 8 of them in total. So for each of them, I'm going to just make stress on the stress interview and as well as the group interview. For the stress interview, there might be, let's say it's a warehouse function, and as well as we'll do the warehouse and we'll come back to the med lab scientist role. So now that warehouse function, there's going to be a whole lot of this. Is definitely going to be a stressful job. So now you want to take the person through those. So it's more like when they're coming physically, you are taking them through this interview, through the process of that job. You want to find out, can they perform on this job? So at that instance, you want to take them to the warehouse. You want to take them. So those things, they practicalize it. If it's going to be, let's say, the med lab sciences that we're considering earlier, so the person has to, put them to the test. So remember that physical interview, oftentimes is practical sessions. For some, that physical, they just want to meet with you first, then arrange a practical. But it might just be a physical and as well as a practical session immediately. So instantly, you have to engage with those tests. If say you could do blood culture, start doing blood culture right away. You have to do it. So you cannot say me, you can do this, you can do that. I cannot. You can use this analyzer machine. You cannot use that. And if you cannot use those machines, so why exactly did you have them on your CV? Then that's why I was making reference to people who say they have worked maybe as a med lab scientist for over for the past 10 years, and they have a gap of another 5 years or 10 years, which they have done something else outside of that particular role. That's why I was saying that they are not fit because they're not fit to be considered for that role because there's a gap. Technology has come in. So now if you're bringing the person in, except the person goes on or is brought in to be trained or retrained again. Because if the organization has acquired new machines within a period of these 10 years, they will not be able to operate them. And you are bringing them, and let's say you have over 5,000 samples of tests to be run every day. Who is going to run it? You don't need to hire someone to come and start, to go and hire another person to come and do their job for them. You hire them to do the job. That's exactly why you hire them. See why you must get someone who is currently doing something in the same as it is described on the job description. Now, we go to the interview session that we're talking about. That in that interview, which is definitely going to be it's going to contain both the practical and as well as the other forms of interviews that wants to be implemented by the organization. So at the end of the day, it might be a pattern interview. They might decide to use they create a different pattern to have that particular interview to test the knowledge. So whichever pattern that they use, there's some organization you come, there's some games you have to play to test your IQ. Then you go to stress. Then at the end of the day, you go through this, you go through that. So all this in one day, they put you through all those things. So to ascertain, can you handle all these things within a 9-to-5 job? So at the end of the day, they put you through all this. So if you go through all this and you're successful, then that's great, and they move you to the next level of the session. So let's take, for instance, now that you have been successful. So outside of that 5, there's definitely going to be people who are the best or the brightest amongst this set that you have. So amongst this set, the top 3, that top 3 is what will now be presented to the management. So the management can now select. So at the end of the day, the management might have to. So now the management might even delegate, say, okay, let the head of HR continue with the process, and at the end, or even in doc, there's some offshore that have the head of HR finish all the whole thing. At the end of the day, just provide the details of the candidates so that they of the new employees so that they can just sign off on it. That is that. But there's some management that decide that they are going to, before the person is hired, they must meet with the senior management. Most of the shows are like that. And there are some key roles that are very critical to that. Now, for instance, if you want to hire front desk, you want to hire maybe other floor level staffs, some big organizations, the management does not need. But when it comes to supervisory roles, managerial roles, other key leadership roles, in fact, every organization that I have interacted with, I've seen them that they have to meet with the highest level of leadership of that organization. They need to meet with them, and this also because they also have their own level of assessment. There's a way that they're going to also run their assessment. A quick one it might just be a meeting, and they just tell me, just talk to me, and they begin to just a conversation, and by that they get to know what kind of person is this. For those executive manager, that's what they do. What kind of person is this? So when they deduce that, okay, I can work with this person. So that's all. And it might just be a 20 minutes interview, it might be a 30 minutes interview, and that is all. So they decide, okay, is this person okay to join us, or if this is this person not okay to join? That's what happens at that particular stage. So now, once the candidate is successful at this role, okay, I think, are there any questions that are coming in? Please just keep your questions, um, ensure that you still keep your questions down so that I could still go through them for all the things that I've talked about, starting from that recruitment and this process of selection. So you can just pen down your question. I'm going to take them one by one. And whichever one that we're able to complete, maybe we'll do that tomorrow, like we stated. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk more. So now, once these candidates are selected for this role and they are successful, because the management has to just pick just one person from that three that were presented to them. So the remaining two might be archived. The profile might be archived. It all depends on how the audition works. So maybe tomorrow they might decide, okay, they're going to hire from that remaining two people who made it to the finals. Now, but for some audition, they might decide no longer to meet those people. Whenever they need to fill a role that's similar to that, they have to go do a fresh interview, a fresh recruitment process is initiated. So now, in the instance where you have, take for instance, there's some organization that might decide we're going to be hiring the three of them because there are some roles that are like that. I'll give you an example, which is in, let's say, for sales, or let's say for other key roles in the organization that are very, very strategic. They might just hire the three of them. And at the end of the day, and they will decide, okay, who is going to be, they want a leader, and as well as, let's say they want a team lead, and as well as they want to hire the three of them. So but at the instance, they're not going to decide who is going to lead the team among the three of them. So, but they're going to delegate leadership to the three of them individually at different times. So they hire the three of them, they come on board. And they come on, and once they come on board, at the end of the day, the leader in them emerge. And I don't, so whoever so that's more like it's still in process. The selection process still in the selection process has not ended, even though they may not be employed. But because you want a leader to emerge out of the three of them, you want to now pick based on how they perform on the job. That is one. Then there are some other job roles that might where you have to sign, or some organization that tell you you have to come on board. Let's take for instance, they hire 3 or even 5. And at the end of the day, 2 people have to go. What they just need is 3. So, but 2 people have to go. So they bring in those top 5, those bright 5. They bring them. So, but at the end of the day, they now have to compete, get the results, or do their job very well because they need to test. All those, you've gone through all those tests, you've done all those things. Yes, that's great. You checked all their boxes. It was amazing. So, but at the end of the day, you now need to pass through this particular phase, and which is they put you to the test, into the field, go do this thing that you say you can do, and let's see the result. And once you can do that effectively well, then that's great for the organization. So you find out that they are placed, and at the end of the day, 3 people are retained, and the remaining 2 maybe let go, or the remaining 2 maybe moved to another particular section of the organization. That should there be a new need arising from there, and they match that particular need, so it might be done there. So now, and okay, so now this moves us to the place. Okay, I think before we begin to go on, we just talked about the recruitment and the selection process. So before we talk about the induction and the placement process, I think the best thing for us now is to take questions on this particular session that we have done, which is recruitment and selection. Please go ahead and ask your questions. I'll be taking them now. Okay. Hold on, please let the question come in gradually so I can read them quickly. Okay, someone talked about stress. How that is what stress is with regards to the position. Is it about managing stress during? Of course, that's one. Then your ability to take on stress. There are some jobs that come with so much stress. Yes, you can do it, but the stress tells on you. So if the stress tells on you, it's just only a matter of time you break down. So they don't want that kind of situation where the staff will break down within the organization. So they don't want. So they are going to be monitoring that particular person, and as well as how the stress of the job is going to tell on that particular candidate. So that is exactly what that one tries to pick up there. So the next question says, okay, I think someone's asking if how do human resource management manage applications from excellent resumes from physically challenged and physically challenged people, and which job roles or company can they work? Of course, there are some organizations that where being physically challenged or whichever kind of challenge the person is having issues with does not affect their productivity with work. Please let the questions come in gradually so that I can take them. If not, if it scrolls past so much, you might not be able to take all the questions. So now, for instance, I'll give you an example. Let's say a tech job. If the challenge does not affect your ability, the person's ability to think, let's say it's into coding or programming, your hands are great, and there's no problem with it. Maybe there are other parts of the other parts where the challenges are. So long as the place where you do not have challenges can effectively carry out those jobs, then there's no issue around it. Definitely, there's some job functions that are there. Oftentimes these days, you have tech is making it much more easier for people to carry out their job, and even in these days where you have people working from home, where if your job, where your designation is something that you can do excellently well without you needing to move around, or where your challenge, your physical challenge does not affect your job, there's no problem with it. Most organizations do not have problem with hiring people. The excellence is that you can do your job. Your challenge does not affect the job you're going to be hired with. So it has no problem with it. But I've had colleagues who are physically challenged, who had their different issues. So the question is, the challenge should not affect your capacity to execute the job. That is all. Okay, so now I have to scroll a little. Okay. Someone is asking about the meaning of human resource management. We'll talk about is the process of procuring human resources, that's procuring, maintaining, and managing human resources. It's a process of identifying, procuring, and maintaining human resources for an organization. That's just the simple definition of human resources. Now, when we talk about procuring, is you're sourcing. You want to source from pools of candidates, then identify the people who are great for it. You select them, then onboard them. So all this that does not still end there. That's where it now talks about maintaining. Now the maintaining talks about the learning and development. It talks about the remuneration. Talks about the welfare. Talks about the other things that requires that or that concerns human resource management. Everything that concerns it, that's where we talk about maintaining. You're identifying, you're procuring, and you are maintaining. So so you identify that this particular need you have this need in the organization, a human resource need. When you identify that particular need and say, okay, what kind of person is going to fit into this need? That's where your job design, your job description, job analysis comes in. So because you've done those analysis, you've done those research process, and you have identified that this job, this particular need is required and we have to fill it. Then your procurement now comes into the place where you now have to now publish these vacancies, you might decide, okay, we cannot, yeah, we might do. Remember, we said that prior to publishing, you might just want to go the fast route, reach out to your fellow colleagues within the in the organization. Do you have people who can fit into this role? You reach out to your fellow HR managers. You go to other social HR platforms. You want to go there and let them know, okay, you need this particular. So if they can give that, if they can give you their candidates as quick as possible, then that's great. You want to work with them. Then in the instance where you're not able to get there, you will now want to go to publish in the job boards. Now, I now made an instance about using the job board. The job board gives you the opportunity to have a large number of people, a large pool, apply for that particular role. So you have the flexibility of selecting very more or credible candidates for the role. Now, remember that you have to ask for those referrals or recommendations from colleagues or people. You want to give them that respect. They work in the organization. They've earned your trust. So meaning if they can, and if they are great, they are great candidates or they are great employees, it means that they have people like them that they could want to bring into the organization that also will be great. So that's a very good way. So more like where you have a great person and you say, can you recommend this thing for me? Or somebody who knows about fashion and say, can you recommend clothing for me? So that's more something like that. So then I think that answers the question. Please, if that did not answer, you let me know. Then we'll go ahead to talk about, okay, it says, how do we manage applicants in other states or region or planning to relocate to the job location or region? Yes. Okay, so in that instance, there are some jobs where, for instance, there are positions that do their planning. Take for instance, if we want to hire a candidate in April, so we can start this January to finalize things on that particular candidate. And we're saying, okay, come for interview. So, but are you willing as a candidate? Let's take for instance, you are living in Zamfara and this job role is in Abuja. And we're saying, so if we schedule you for an interview in Abuja, can you come? That is the main thing. So because it's not about we've done all the whole thing, we've gotten to the we've got to the virtual stage, you've done the virtual stage and you passed. And we're not inviting you for a physical interview and you do not show. So that makes a mess of everything. So you get it. So that's one of the reasons why most HR do not even bother to consider people who are outside of that location. Because by the time you are inviting them for that interview, they rubbish every single thing, every single effort that has been placed thus far getting to that particular stage. Because they might just say, I'm no longer interested, I cannot travel, or they give you different kind of excuses. That is it. Then remember that coming for that physical interview does not necessarily mean that they're going to get the job. You see, that's the major issue. So the interview does not stop at the virtual stage. You still have to come in for that physical interview. Remember that physical interview might even include practicals, a different kind of tests. Like I listed out here, I wrote out a lot of tests that will be done. So, and it all depends on the one that the organization chooses. And these are just a few of them. Some organizations have developed their own level of tests. Maybe let's say an IQ test here for the organization A might be different from an IQ test for organization. So their questions are different and their approach to measuring the IQ test are different. So that's that. So I think I've been able to answer your question with regards to applying for a job from a different location. Okay. I think, hold on. Okay, so more questions. So please, what's the difference? Okay. I think I've answered the issue about human resource management, so I don't need to take that again. Okay, so this one talks about the, hold on. Okay. Okay, so this one talks about the pattern interview. So it's asking about the pattern interview. What exactly does it do? So now let's say now practically the pattern interview is planned to a high level of degree and accuracy. more like precision and exactitude, such that okay, we want this thing to be done like this. X, Y, we want it to follow this particular procedure. So it's more like when we say a procedural interview, such that a procedural test, sorry, we want to test your skills with regards to using a procedure, accuracy. So you can be able to do this thing accurately. So we are testing for your accuracy. So that's one of the things that this particular one does. So that pattern interview is designed to test for accuracy, your accuracy, your precision, and your exactitude for a particular job or job role. So I think that is that. So let's go on to talk about the next one. This is how do we, okay, sorry, are these questions being reasked again? Okay, it says how is the procedure for graduate trainee programs? Are there basics or specific requirements for considering applicants, especially when experience is not there? Of course. So now, this is one of the reasons why we're having these sessions where you are being given some hands-on training. So now, the piece of experience, that's why you graduate trainee in the first instance. So these graduate trainees are going to be trained. So, but they need a hands-on experience. So at the end of the day, you're trained, you're giving tests, you're going to pass through series of tests. So it's going to be ascertained, they're going to be ascertaining different things to say, okay, this person is suitable for this particular role, or this person is going to be moved to this role or moved to that role. It's just like when during those processes where we have to move to either science or we have to move to this or we have to move to different classes. So different tests are put in place for us to test our strengths. Where do we move this person to? Where do we move that person to? That's really what this graduate training is all about. So it's not basically about experience, because where exactly are you having your experience apart from your internship? So the essence of the graduate training program is to give you some hands-on experience, then test your skills, test your ability, might also put practical tests, such that at the end of the day, we can deduce that yes, you are great for this role, and we now move you, possibly you are moved to the administrative department, you move to the field department, whichever one where you prove great, that's where you're going to as also is in line with what you studied. Of course, that's definitely what you're going to be expecting. Okay, so now don't know if that answered your question. So we'll go ahead to talk about. Okay, so what stage do the credentials come in during the interview? Now, the credentials, oftentimes, you might decide that you want them to send it while they are applying for the jobs, so that you don't need to go through the screening process. You don't need to go through the CV process and the screening process only to find out that their credentials are not great, or maybe there's a problem with their credentials. And I use the word a problem because let's take for instance, there are some candidates, they go and apply for a job and they're waiting, they are still awaiting results. For instance, this role might say we need an ICANN, we need an ICANN certified accountant for this role. You're still awaiting your ICANN, you're in your final stage. Why would you go and apply for this role and you still have the temerity to put ACA there? So it's like it still does not go down well. So when you're asked to now produce your ICANN, you're telling me that it's at the final stage, you've not been able to produce, so you can't produce it now. So you can put, you are still going to. So that's one of the reasons. Then secondly, you have some people who finish, who just fresh graduates, and they think they're still awaiting results and they're applying for jobs. So you don't want those kind of issues. Then we have now you might say, how is that possible? Of course, they've not gone for NYSC level. People maybe that particular role just need people who are graduates, but personally maybe NYSC are exempted or so, and they decide to apply. So that can still come up there. And person tells you, I just recently finished, I've not got my certificate, I am awaiting. Wait until you get your certificate for that particular role, except the rule says, okay, it does not require that. Then secondly, there are some job roles, maybe the person requires an OND or the job role considers OND. I'm talking about HND OND now. So that the person is now applying with OND. That's a different thing. You're not using your HND because HND is not available. So you're not applying and stating that you have a HND that you cannot prove. That's going to be a lie on your CV, and you don't want that. Okay, I think that addresses that. So we'll talk about then you might now and the second another stage for presenting your the credentials. So if you do not ask for it at that stage of application, when they are coming for interview, you might decide that you want to see those credentials at that time when they're coming for a physical interview. So you are inspecting those credentials to ascertain are they great. So as a HR person, there's some you have to also prepare yourself. But the HR department have a way of vetting those certificates if they are real. They have a way of getting across to the organizations or institutions to find out if they issued out those, more like a verification, a background check on those certificates. So that is that. Then the third place where this can be requested for is at the point of documentation. That's when we're talking about placement and document. We're going to get into that, but I think we're going to now be doing that tomorrow, not today anymore. So at the place of placement and documentation, you can request for that. At that time, you want to scrutinize all those documents and credentials that the applicant or the successful candidate now has presented to you. So, but you see, why this might be a problem for you to request for it at that stage, because take for instance that certificate is not great, but I mean great maybe it's not original. I use that not original, it's not authentic. So now it means you have wasted time because recruitment process can actually consume time. Sometimes it can last up to a month. So you see, if you don't take into consideration those basic things that are very critical to that job role, and you arrive at the candidate that you want, only to find out that that person is not great for the role, that's going to be like a waste of time. But one of the major saving grace is that those people who made it to that top 3 or top 5, you can always reach out to the next person who is close to because you have a scorecard while you were doing all this, all your interviews, throughout the recruitment process. There's a scorecard that is created. So that scorecard is what you're going to use. So maybe the highest in the scorecard, because that's what you're going to present to management, how you were able to arrive at this candidate that you have presented to them. So that scorecard, the next person on the list is who you're going to be bringing. So there's no bias such that maybe you leave the second highest to the third highest or to the fourth or to the fifth. No, based on that order which they have passed. So because for every of the interviews or the tests that they pass, they are graded, they are scored, and you are placing them there. So you know the next highest and contacts those ones. So that's a saving grace at that particular stage. So that's that. I think the next question talks about says, is experience important in entry-level roles? If no, why do organizations request experience in entry level? Now, more importantly for this question is there are some, I think almost all the schools or institutions, tertiary institutions, before you graduate, you have to go for internship. I don't know if that applies to all, that's I said almost, if that applies to all kinds of courses that we have in school today. But I think so, to the best of my knowledge, it's not to be corrected. So, but I believe that you must have gone for either your 6 months internship or your one year internship. So that's an experience, and it counts. It counts. So, for instance, that you don't have any form of work experience anymore outside of that internship, that particular one counts. So, but as long as you are a graduate trainee for a particular role, then you'll be trained for that role. Then there are some roles where trainings can, on that particular role, trainings can also supplement for the experience. You already have a training in this particular field or for this particular job role or for this particular job function. Then you could be considered. You could be considered for that role. So, but when it comes to entry level, when we're talking about entry level is 0 to 2 years. For some organization, is 0 to 3 years. So when they're telling you, and when you see entry level role, that does not mean zero experience. Entry level does not mean zero experience. But when somebody is telling you a graduate trainee, or a graduate internship, they definitely know that all that you have is your industrial attachment, IT, or you have your 1 year internship attachment, whichever one it is. At least those ones who go for industrial attachment, they have 4 months, then they still go for another 6 months. Then why for some they go for 1 year? So it all depends on the institution that the institution that was attended. So I think that sorts that out. So whichever way you look at it, both for the graduate training, you have had some level of experience. So that's why it's important that we also encourage people while you go for your IT, your attachments, make it let it be a top concern for you, or make it a priority that you intend in line with what you are currently studying. In line with what you're currently studying. So I think that is great. You want to do that. Then, but when it comes to this graduate trainee or the graduate internship, now you're out of school. So based on the assessment that was done, you can be placed in a different field and you grow your career from there. That's exactly why it is that way. So it's imperative that I think that's it's imperative that we know that and keep that at the back of our minds. So do I have more questions? I may not be able to take all the questions. So please, if I do not answer your questions, keep them tomorrow. We'll continue from there. So now, is there no means of filtering email CV applications without having to open them in case where the office doesn't use a HR software? Well, I don't know how to answer that, because the organization, if they don't have the HR software, you have the easiest way, like I've already said, is to use the email. That's just the best option is to use emails. If you want to use a working application, that's going to be tedious for you. You may not be able to track them. If anything happens, you lose all those data, you lose all those files. Take, for instance, let's say someone makes a mistake and shreds those paper, or the cleaner comes and packs those paper and shred them. So and packs the CVs and shred them, thinking that you no longer need them. So you don't want those kind of scenarios to play out. That's why. And secondly, you can't track those applications. For instance, maybe there's anything that happens in the future and those CVs or those applications are lost, you cannot track them. So how do you now prove that this person actually applied to that organization or to join that organization? There is no proof to their CV. Of course, I know that because when we're going to be talking about the placement stage and the documentation, all this is supposed to be archived in that person's folder. The application, their CV, all those are to be archived. Their cover letter, the application, their CV is supposed to be archived in as part of their documentation. Okay, so now I think that answers your question. So by saying without having to open them, but definitely we have to open every CV to go through them. Remember that when you are CV through the HR software, you still have to look at their CV, except you are, because some HR software, they have to impute every single thing by themselves, that is by hand, while either with their phone, their mobile phone, or with their laptop. So they might, so it gives them details about, okay, where did you work, what did you do? They have to manually impute all those. So, but those HR software that does not that just allows for them to attach their CV, you will still have to open their CV. The same way you have to open it if it's an email. So either way, you have to open it, and you also ensure that you just have to open their CV. That is it. So it's time consuming. It is stressful. HR that's where the bulk of the challenge happens outside of the performance management. Performance management is another issue, but I think that's not the stage where you have to start talking about that now as a graduate training. This particular stage where we're talking about recruitment, selection, and placement, that's what we're considering in this training session. So all those other ones are what your supervisors and what your superiors will be doing. Or as you continue your journey in HR, you can begin to take all those other trainings as well. So now talks about minimum of 2 weeks. You can reach out to. Okay, that's the question. Okay, someone said about entry level experience. I think I just said something. I just finished talking about that entry level experience, where they say entry level does not mean zero experience. For most of, I've said that before. For most organizations, it is 0 to 2 years. For some organizations, it is 0 to 3 years. That is entry level for them. And meaning someone who has 1 year experience has an advantage over you. Someone who has 2 years experience in that for applying for that same entry level role has more advantage over you who has 0 experience. So that's why where the graduate trainee comes in. Or I said you can now a training specifically related to that job can now give you an advantage. Can now give you an advantage as well as someone who has, because you now know some basic things that are there that takes place in that particular field. You know what goes on there, even though you may not have practicalized them, but at least you know what it is. And knowing what it is now is something that is current. It's not a stale knowledge that you have, because you say you know it, but what you know is still does not make any sense, does not apply. Even someone who has experience can be still. Remember, I gave you examples of somebody who has used a particular machine for a good number of years and has stayed away from using machines or from working in that particular sector. When new technologies come in, like what we have today, where every new year we have new technologies coming in, new technologies are evolving. So, and the person has stayed away for over 10 years, trying to make a return to that particular field. It might be somewhat a little bit difficult. That is one. Then two, you have fresh people who are growing their career. So these roles will easily displace that person. So it's that's why it's more like when they leave, it's not advisable for people to you leave your field and you venture into other, like maybe you've been working, let's say as a med lab scientist, and you leave your role as a med lab scientist, and maybe you go and do something else. Maybe you say you're doing personal business, or you're doing personal thing, or let's say you're doing something else, and it's outside of med lab science. So at the end of the day, and 10 years is gone. It does not count. So that is exactly the point I am making there. So when it comes to 0 to 3 years, that's entry level. Entry level does not mean 0 years. Like I proved here that even your the graduate trainee, you do not have 0 years experience. You also have some level of experience because you intend, except maybe you were given industrial attachments and you did not take them seriously. Because if you did, you studied in the poly or you used the university, at the end of the day, you have a grace of 1 year to intern in line with what you were doing. So meaning you have an experience, regardless of whatever it is, you have experience. So, but the question is, how do you put it forth? Remember, I was giving an analogy, and if you were smart enough, you would get. There are some things I already doled out. You would have noticed them that I talked about putting details on your CV. I said when you work, there are some basic things that you have to put. So if you did this, right, every single thing, as long as they are related to the job, right, every single thing that you did in regards to that role, you did them. So, but you have to write them down. So all those things are counting as the experience you have. Now, take for instance, let me say I did med lab science. Now, I intend as a med lab assistant, as a med lab science assistant in a laboratory during my 1 year internship. And I just wrote there, I'll just come every day. And it has to be very clear. I'll put it this way. I assisted the head of the laboratory with, I did blood culture, I did this, I did that. I assisted them to do this, do this, do this, do that, every single thing. That's why when you go to intern, even though they did not allow you to touch that machine, but you know how to use it. You observe them, how they were doing it, how it was done. Because there are some machines that are very expensive, and they say, okay, it is only the head of that unit that can use that machine. So, but that does not mean that it does not exempt you. They do not close your eyes. So you must, you can look and observe. For that 1 year you stay there, you can say, okay, this machine, this is how it is done, or blood culture, this is how it is done, even though it is the head of HR that does it. But you can put that this is exactly what was done, and this is how it is, and I can do it. So that's exactly what I'm making reference to when I was saying that. So I think we are very, very smart, and we should have caught those ideas I was passing across. So even on your CVs, you should be able to make edits now, even for this particular session, I must have enlightened you on what some things that you can go and do on your CV. So now let's go on to the next one, please. And I may just take only a few questions more and we can close this session. Okay. In a case where you reached out to them and they do not respond and they didn't even send any rejection email, what do what does it mean? So I think this question is not so clear because I don't know who is reaching out. Is it the HR? As a HR, you are reaching out to the employer, to the applicants, or as an applicant, the applicant is reaching out to the organization. So the question is not clear. So I don't know how to respond to this. Maybe you might have to react the question again. So now this one says, can you explain maintaining human resource part of the maintenance? Okay, now this maintenance talks about your learning and development. When you get into an organization, you're not just going to say, I go and do the job. They just put you on your desk and start doing it. The maintenance here, they set you up. That's part of it. That induction process that's maintenance has started. You are inducted. During the induction process, you are trained. You are taught about the workplace culture. You are taught about the basic things that are required for this role, how to succeed, how to be successful in this particular role. How do we do all you get the employee handbook, the basic things are given to you. So that's maintenance one. Then your details. When you have problem, let's take for instance that you started working and they paid you or they did not even pay you the first month. You go and meet the HR. That is possibly maybe you just have the HR in that organization, and you meet with the department or the HR and say, XYZ, I was not paid, or I was. This is what was stated in my offer letter, but this is what happened. So now that's also maintenance. So they help you with issues, resolving HR related issues. Then let's take for instance that you also have issues with health, and they've not given you a HMO card. So how do you? That's also maintenance. So that's maintaining. Then now let's take for instance that you have you have okay, you are due to go for the leave. You worked I think for most organizations you have to work at least 1 year to be eligible to go on leave. That's for most organizations. So now when you work for them and you say, okay, this is when you are supposed to go on leave, HR, that's maintenance. So HR is going to, you write to HR and they help you, they show you the leave schedule and you can pick your dates and you go and they approve. That's maintenance. Then let's take for instance, while you are working on the job, you're having issues. You don't know how to resolve some basic issues that are making you not to perform very well. Now, the issues might be related to your fellow colleagues, maybe you're unable to flow along, then or you can report to them, or somebody is bullying you, you can report. Or somebody is harassing you, you can report. That's maintenance. Then you talk about your work tool. Maybe your laptop is frustrating you. It's always restarting and restarting, or your charger or whatever it is, or the software you're working with is not working very well. That's another one. Then that's all these are the maintenance and human resource function. Then we talk about your payroll. I think that's that. Then let's move on to the payroll. You have your NHF, you have your payee, the tax deduction. So these are various maintenance that are going on for each of these for each of the employees that have been employed for that position. So there's a tax deductible. So all these their tax are filed. You bring back their tax receipts and you send it to them. You give them all the payslip that we prepared monthly are forwarded to you, so you have a copy of your payslip. All these are maintenance. Then your NHF, your maybe other kind of deductions that are made based on that's peculiar to your organization. For instance, if you signed up maybe to the organization's cooperative, they might have a cooperative. That's maintenance. Now, if you have issues like maybe you need loans, some organizations have that they have that structure. Maybe they'll tell you, okay, if you're up to 1 year, or if you're up to 3 years, or if you're so, you're eligible for this, you're eligible for that. All those, so and you have issues, you can always reach out to them and they grant you. That's also maintenance. Then we talk about maybe personal issues like maybe you're getting married, you're doing this, and you need some time, you need this. HR can help you sort that out, and they can plan for you to take time and go sort out your selling your traditional marriage or whatever it is. You want to go do that. HR can that's maintenance as well. Then for the ladies, you get married and you give birth, and So during that period where you're going to be going for your maternity leave, so how do they manage such that they don't replace you? Because this is 3 months, and you're going to be gone for 3 months. So you see, that's also maintenance. So when they plan your department in such a way, they can hire an intern that can come and work within that 3 months, or whichever way that is suitable for the organization, and that that is suitable for the organization, they can use that method. So these are different ways of maintaining employees. Then the maintenance is very broad. It's very broad, but maintenance covers from the very day their employee steps into the organization till the day the employee leaves. So through that till the exits and the exit, the change management, that process of exit. Because for some opportunity, you're going to retrench stars, they have to train them, they have to help them even exit. That exit might be either retrenchment, retirement, or even if they are going to be relieved. The process there of handling that's the process of making that change is maintenance, such that, for instance, for those who are retiring, they have to take you through retirement trainings, through retirement classes. So they help you understand life after retirement, what you're going to do. So they help you plan it. What would you do? Possibly, maybe if it is to retire after 35 years with the organization. So now, so yeah, for the organization, maybe they have a policy once you are up to 30 years in the organization. So that 5 years, it begins. You start going for your training. A lot of things are put in motion, preparing you ahead of your retirement. You go for a series of trainings, the things that are required for you to put in place for you, so that you have a successful retirement and a successful life, or a great life after retirement. So these things are captured and put. So all these things form that maintenance. So from the point where you join, where you have been selected and you join the organization, to the point where you exit the organization, all these form that maintenance lifespan of each of the human resource, or each of the employee of the organization. I think I have answered that. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So it talks about his previous experience, really important when organizations you apply to is willing to provide coaching, mentorship, the coaching or mentorship on the job training or on-site training. So it's just specific on the organization. And I want to even use this opportunity to say practically, and for every single one who is in the um, mechanical, electrical, I think there's a specific that most of them who have already sent out, who have indicated clearly. We've already sent out some preliminary questions to them. So I think those ones are sorted. So what the option does is based on the employers. So the employer might say, okay, we're going to do this, or this is how we're going to do our own induction, or this is how we're going to do this is how we're going to do our own graduate training. They are different. So we work with different organizations. So now, organization A, their process might be different, or what they will need might be different. For instance, we have an employer that is saying, we want people who did, let's say they did engineering, and also they went to engineering schools, and they did this, they did that. So those are criteria, not experience. So when it comes to college training, criteria, the experience might form part of the criteria, but oftentimes it's zero experience, because when I say zero does not mean that it is zero, because you had the opportunity to go for 1 year internship. Except maybe you want to tell me about a new course that we now have in this country, where you go through your school without going for internship. I don't know, maybe you can just correct me. I need to know about that. Nobody's full of an embodiment of knowledge. So now maybe you want to remind me that there are courses where you have to finish everything and there's no internship. There might be. So, but oftentimes, those times where you go for your holidays, then you did, what were you doing through your holiday period? Some people use the opportunity to go and intern in places. Take, for instance, in mechanical engineering, or in electrical engineering. Well, even during their holiday period, where they had 1 month holidays and the rest of it, they used the opportunity to go join maybe an electrical technician or an electrical engineer. Maybe it might just be a small business, and the person brings you and decides to. So you become more like no, I'm not saying as an apprentice because no, there's a way they form the apprentice thing. But this one, you're more like an assistant. Thank you. I think that's more like an assistant where you can work and assist and just learn. You're just learning. You come in to assist the person to learn. So doing all these things, they count as experience. So it's not until you have a formal designation, intern, this, that is when no, that is not what we're saying. So whatever every single experience that is aligned to to what you studied or to the job you're applying for. But now this is graduate trainee, meaning that every single experience that is aligned to what you studied. Let's take for instance, you did mechanical engineering. If you did mechanical engineering, meaning maybe you did production or you did automobile option, whichever option or any other option that you use that you chose, you must have had opportunities to intern. That's what we're saying there. So those ones they count as the little experience. So you can always put that in your CV. So I'm not going to talk about experience anymore. Stress so much on that. Okay, so please. Okay, I think I'll just take one final question, please. Which one is saying? Okay, this one says no. The applicants reaching out to the organization after the interview and yet and haven't heard from them. I was asking if it is okay to reach out to them to know your status on the application process. Yes, if they've not reached out to you, you can reach out to the organization. You can follow up on your application. There's no problem with that. Oftentimes, maybe because that is we need to know. See this, all these things that we wrote that we'll be discussing on HR. This is just a little thing on HR. We'll not begin to talk about that you don't, because I'm not taking you through the broad things that happen within the HR. So now you cannot imagine the kind of stress that go on in HR. Getting the candidates alone is enough work. So they might not have all the time in the world to reply all the candidates who applied. So you can imagine you send let's take for instance now I make a publication for a med lab scientist and I have over 1,000 applications. So ideally, I'm not finished going through all the applications. Do I not start going to reply to each of the 1,000 people that applied? So there are sometimes that the people I might just apply to the people I might reply to might just be the people that I interviewed that got to that interview stage. Then I maybe at least there are fewer. I can manage to send them a mail and say, okay, at this stage, you're not able to continue this, but we have archived your profile for consideration, or we have moved your profile maybe to a sister company or whatever. So I might decide to do that. So, but the main thing is, as like you asked, is it okay to reach out to the organization? Yes, it is okay. It is not a crime to reach out to the organization to understand the status. Then there's another thing when it comes to reaching out to the organization. Let's say you did an interview this week. You can do a follow-up. Maybe you can do a follow-up, but maybe you did an interview on Thursday and you're calling on Friday. You're calling on Monday. You're calling. So you're calling every day. It becomes too much. So you must know how to spread your follow-up. And 1 or 2 follow-up is enough. I think that is great. And sometimes when you do your first follow-up, you might just get definitely reply immediately. So, but ensure that at least you stayed up to 7 days, 1 week, without getting hearing from the organization before you reach out again to them. It's not that you did interview today and tomorrow you're calling, next tomorrow you're calling, and they have other things that they're going to be doing. They're not going to be sitting all day picking calls and responding to calls. So now imagine that you have to keep calling and calling and calling. Maybe you have to you call and all the 1,000 people have to call in. How many more hours is remaining within the day? 9 to 5 for them to work. So they might not even respond to the call because sometimes you might call and they don't pick your call. So reply to the email. If you have a mail where maybe they exchange the mail with you or they ask you go to the preliminary stage, you might reply back to those preliminaries to find out what is the update. I personally, okay, even as at yesterday, I had to reply some emails. They wrote to know the status of their application. because they've gotten to the preliminaries. Okay, this is after some days, after a week. Yes, that was after a week. And this candidate wrote and said, okay, he wants to know about the update on this, and I gave him all the details that he required, all the feedback he required, and I gave him an encouraging feedback. That was what it is. So, and that's how it's supposed to be. So you don't just do your interview and quickly you want to get a feedback, or you want to close out immediately on the uh, interview. Remember that they can interview today, but they are still waiting for a convenient date for the management to make a decision. So you have to also be patient. As I said, a minimum of 7 days, 1 week is that's great for you to do your first follow up, and a second follow up will just be okay. Don't If you do a first follow up and they give you a definite reply, there's only replying again or sending an email to that email and more importantly, it's better that you do an email than you place a call. For most of the calls, nobody will reply. That is the truth. So because take for instance, I'm having I have to do this training now, and I have tons of ringing the office phone. And you say, nobody's picking your call. You see, because somebody is busy doing something else. If I'm holding this session, I cannot go and be replying to those messages or to those calls. But if it is via an email, after the day's job, before I go, I can decide that I want to take 1 hour to check all those emails and reply to the ones that I can. I think that is that. So I think that will be all from now. Please, every other question will be taken tomorrow. Okay. One says, where is the job location? And the other one talked about how do you put a virtual training without certification into your CV. Okay, so all these other ones, we're going to be talking about them tomorrow, because the time for this the schedule for this training is between 10 to 12, and we have exhausted that. We'll take these, we'll pick out these questions and add them to what we're going to be doing tomorrow. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about the placement and onboarding for the new employees. At least you have those basic hands-on knowledge for this. Then afterwards, other emails will be sent to you, communicated to you, to all the series of training that will be done for the graduate trainees for this particular January. Okay, and other information will be communicated, but all the information will come to you gradually, bit by bit, as we progress into the session. So I think that brings this particular session to a close, so that I could go into handle other demanding tasks for today. So I think that is all. Okay, so I think that is all. Every other question, please do send them do reserve them for tomorrow, and bring them up again, and we'll handle that. Thank you so much for participating in this. A knowledge assessment, like I said earlier, will be done at the end of all the trainings. So always make sure you're taking notes of every single thing that we are doing, and ask your questions with regards to the training. It's important that asking questions that are outside of the training. Okay, that brings us to a close. Thank you so much for attending. I'll be ending the live stream now. Enjoy your day, and I'll see you tomorrow again, same time.